Hey everyone, welcome to the Attractions Group podcast with me, Cleet, and David here. David, before you say anything, I have to out you.
Oh, okay.
Last week,
Oh,
last week you
eh,
said sometimes you start to do a little dance while the
I
intro video is
do.
playing.
I
That time I saw it. I looked for it, and it was spectacular.
yeah. I was trying to do the drum going around with the little toe tapper coming into it, and of course at the end, no one sees this, but I do the coin toss. The key is to catch it before it drops. But yeah, so yeah, call me out on that. I can handle that one. I
Okay,
appreciate that always.
all right, yeah, no, I had to. I mean, it was an awesome sight.
So, Clee, how are things going for you? How's your week been?
I've had a good week. I went to Rochester, New York this weekend, and I
Oh,
did not get to go to Seabreeze. So like, what's the point of going to Rochester if you don't go to Seabreeze? Unfortunately, it was way too cold for that though.
ah, yeah, up here in Ohio, it's spring break time, which for the normal people, you'd probably go, hey, we're gonna go somewhere warm, Florida, California, Texas, any place that has a serviceable beach at this time of year. No, our family we took off and drove 2 hour, yeah, 2 hours to Middle Kentucky, to the Kentucky Horse Park, which was the most unique experience in horseback riding. Of course, in Ohio, the night before we went, rain, thunderstorms, and rain and thunderstorms after we left. But sandwiched in between it, we had great weather. Just a great, unique experience. If the guests listen to this have never been to the Kentucky Horse Park, it is, or even horse country down in thoroughbred country in east of Lexington. Very unique experience. More wood fences, just miles and miles and miles of wood fences. Just the most unique experience. We'll probably do it again sometime.
I love that. So if you guys are new to the Attractions
So,
Group podcast, we like to talk about theme parks, entertainment, cruise ships, whatever. We like attractions,
mhm.
hence the name. And one
Yes.
of the segments we like to do on here is called a Pick Six, where we talk about six things in the attractions industry that are new and exciting, and we pick six. That's a good name.
Yeah,
It's named well.
that's who it is. Yeah, and I think at some point we need to get like a little bumper music and another graphic, so I can be back here doing something different again to be called out on. But yeah, it's something to separate that off. So in the spirit of this, pick six number one is last year after we hit the upload button on the podcast from last week is when the news broke. Now I have my ear to the ground. I think a lot with the things happening in the industry. This one took me off guard. There were no rumors that I heard of that this is even brewing. So when it came out that Hershend Family Enterprises or Entertainment HFE, whatever you call it, everyone just calls it Hershend, had made the move to purchase the Palace Entertainment properties in the U.S. I believe there's 20 of them. It just it came out of nowhere. It was one of those where we were done recording. It's time to upload. Maybe we need to go back and do the episode over. But because I mean that's a huge merger. That's the second big merger in the span of a year, and it definitely deserved news at the time. Other people got their things out, so we'll be a week behind, a day late and a dollar short. I get it. But what are your thoughts on that merger?
Wow, I'm so excited. I mean, I can't even tell you for some of these parks how much good can come out of this. For Kennywood, for Adventureland, for Lake Compounce, I'm just thinking the future looks so bright. And also, I think like Hershend, they own Silver Dollar City, they own Wild Adventures, they own Dollywood, they own Kentucky Kingdom. I think there's a good kind of through thread through those parks. I think Wild Adventures kind of is a little bit different than their other parks. Um, and I think Kentucky Kingdom is, to an extent, a little bit different than their other parks. So I don't think they're going to have a problem where they make all their parks the same. I think they'll be able to allow the parks that have this brand and this beloved community in them already to keep that, and they're just going to be there for support. And I'm pumped up. So speaking of Hershend, by the way, Dollywood, pick six number two, has announced, well, has teased majorly a new coaster for 2026. So we've heard a lot about, I mean, starting back in 2023 at the IAAPA Expo, there was supposedly a rumor that Dollywood was visiting a bunch of coaster booths for a 2026 project. And everyone's like, okay, that's exciting, but way down the line. Well, 2025 somehow. I don't know how that happened, but what we're seeing is a rumor that this new coaster is going to fly above the tree line. That's the phrase we've heard a few times in a few different
Mhm.
places. And I don't know what to think about that. Obviously, that means it's going to be tall. Does it mean maybe it could be a flying coaster? I don't know. I think whatever it's going to be, the capacity is going to be super important because that's the world Dollywood lives in. They've been just growing like crazy in terms of attendance. So I think a B&M is maybe the thing that we're going to see coming just because the capacity is hard to touch. You got any ideas? Any guesses, David?
No, I really don't. The imagination could run wild on this because they are starting to tease about it awful early. A lot of parks they start doing their teasing sometime around midsummer and then make their announcements either August when their seasonal summer season starts winding down. Dollywood's starting on this pretty early, and also the imagination can run wild in the sense that they have a lot of trees, a lot of vegetation to work around that they can do a lot of interesting theming. They also have the foothills of the Appalachians down in Gatlinburg and the Pigeon Forge area that they can. I mean, there's any number of ways this could go, and
Yeah.
whatever theme they go with, that Dollywood does, and Herschend as an organization does great with storytelling and in putting things together and making memorable experiences. And really, this is gonna. I'll just leave it at the imagination can run wild on this. And they're starting with the teasing, so I expect big things to hmm, be announced sometime around November. Maybe when maybe our guest coming up has an inclination on this.
Okay.
Maybe not. And if he did, he probably wouldn't tell us anyway. So pick six, number three, Canada's Wonderland has announced that there we go. Permanently retiring Time Warp coaster ahead of the park opening. Now this is a San Perla roller coaster in Cleveland. I'm going to have you help me with the. It's a Volare. Is that the type of
Yeah,
roller coaster this
Volare,
is?
absolutely.
Very very unique experience on this because it doesn't have a launch mechanism coming out of the station. It doesn't have a chain lift hill in the traditional sense, but it has, if you can imagine, one of those barbershop spiral, whatever you want to call them, is kind of that mechanism to take the train up the hill to go down. And of course, this picture is at the top of the hill. Very unique experience. And we did a little bit of research on this. There may be only one of these left in the United States at Luna Park at Coney Island, but they have made the decision they are retiring that ahead of the season. And unfortunately, more it's a steel traction. They have a shelf life to them, and unfortunately, that the curtain time has come for this ride as well. You have any thoughts on this? Have you ridden one of these? Have you been to Canada's Wonderland, or have you been to the one in New York?
I actually have never ridden one of these, and from the way people talk about them, I feel like I would love it. Every time someone says, this ride hurts, it's uncomfortable. I tend to love rides that people describe as painful, for whatever reason. So I think I'm a little sad to see it go, but I might be in the minority on that one for this particular attraction. Next up, here's an interesting topic we could talk a lot more about at some point. But Six Flags Fiesta Texas has made the decision that their chaperone policy will be returning this year. So, if you are 15 years old or younger, you will need to be accompanied by someone who is 21 years old or older to get in or to remain in the parks after 4 p.m. This is nearly identical to the policy Kings Island if you're a Cincinnati local, um, to the policy they had a couple years ago. Um, and it is generally a good thing when these parks do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's for the safety and comfort of everyone. And I don't think it's easy for a park chain to be able to make a big rule that's across the board about a chaperone policy. But on a park to park basis, I totally understand. Some parks are going to need it, some parks are not. It's how you play the game sometimes. But also, I think it's not insanely restricted. If you're 16 years old, you
Mhm.
can go into the park and have a good time. If you're 13 years old and you want to go with your 14-year-old brother, you can go into the park and have a good time as long as you're out of there by 4. That's not so bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately now I believe that most, maybe not all of them, but most of the Cedar Fair parks had that. I don't know so much about the Six Flags parks over the last couple of years, but I know that at least Kings Island had it last year because I know we had our daughter at the time was 14 and 15 years old, so she wasn't able to be there after a certain hour. And unfortunately, I'm sorry, this is personal opinion coming out. It's unfortunate the parks have to do this. I get it. I support it. I've although a number of times I've observed that it hasn't always been the 15 and under crowd stirring the trouble. A lot of times it's the 16 to 18 year olds. But yeah, it's unfortunate that parks have to do this, but it's totally understandable. And maybe we get to a point someday where that this is a thing of the past.
Maybe.
So speaking of things out of sorts, it brings us to pick six, number five. Now, in any other place, this may not be such a big story, but when you're talking about Disney and smoke coming from places where smoke shouldn't be coming from, it does tend to gather some news. So this past week, backstage area in the French Pavilion at Epcot, there's a lot of smoke coming out, and of course, people don't know what the smoke is, but because it's Disney, people always have their phones out. Social media started lighting up with something's on fire at Disney, and the mind rushes to, oh my goodness, a building is burning down. Or they didn't even say it was Epcot at the time, thinking, oh my, for something to make news like this, it must have been Cinderella's castle. Wasn't even a magic. No, that was one of the things that came out on social media that people were talking about. Oh, this people don't even know what they're talking about. Cinderella's castle's on fire. Well, it wasn't even in Magic Kingdom. Is at Epcot, and it wasn't even part of the guest area. It was I believe, a walk-in cooler that caught fire. And if anyone knows anything about electrical fires, they may not be big, but they put out the smoke. So I'm assuming that the area that happened to come under fire, it's probably no bigger than a bedroom, really. But it looked like it could have been an entire building on fire from the pictures that I saw. And I obviously wasn't there myself, but so yeah, that pick six, number five, small fire turns into big news.
Of course. Well, when I heard about this fire, I'm a cast member at Walt Disney World. I am not speaking in any way on behalf of the company, just speaking as Cleet Reinberger. But what I heard was that it was Remy's fault. He got in there, started chewing up some wires, and just he likes to cause a ruckus sometimes. So
I think it might have been the chef chasing after him in the ride. Really, he went
it
to go
could have
swat
been.
at the rat, and he knocked over something and started a fire.
Yeah,
That's a
gosh.
better story, though.
Could you imagine? They change it to the ride to feature the fire now. So down here in my hometown of Orlando, well, my current hometown, where I live in Orlando, there
Yeah.
is also a pretty exciting update from Fun Spot. Fun Spot Kissimmee has just opened a new attraction called Up and Overboard. It is really an interesting kind of ride. So it's a 60-foot tall theme to kind of like a sailboat, and you're sitting here in this sailboat, and you got a sail above you, and you start to swing back and forth like you're rocking on the open waves. Well, this is no ordinary Viking ship. We're going 360. We're going up and overboard, you might say. It's well named. So you get a little bit of hang time at the top, and then you start to swing a little faster, and you really get some good positive G's. You get pushed into your seat pretty hard. I think this is cool, and it's definitely exciting to see the Aries making some new exciting moves and updating their parks. Kissimmee is a wonderful park, but I want to say it's probably been getting the least amount of attention of the Fun Spot parks as of late.
Well, also it's not off the beaten path, but it's in Kissimmee, which is off I-4. Not that the one up in Orlando isn't off of I-4 itself, but it definitely gets more attention because of its location at the end of International Drive.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
the one in
and it,
Kissimmee is on the wrong side of I-4 too. Like, and of course Universal's on the west side of I-4 also, but all those hotels right there, there's
Mhm.
no shortage of tourism. The Kissimmee Park is definitely a little further from the main tourist, areas where guests are going to be a lot.
And fun spots intended to be the park of choice for the locals. And it's a great experience. If you've ever been there, you can walk around. It's a great atmosphere. I've been to both parks. The one up off of International Drive is started out as um, a go kart track and an arcade, and then it just grew from there. And now they have couple roller coasters there. They have an Enterprise and a Music Express, and uh, any number of rides that you might find in the midway of most parks. But it's just a great experience going to those. And our guests come up in a little bit. May have some sort of insight on some things because it happens to be in the same city. But also, if you're coming to the IAAPA Expo, a lot of events that vendors have will, if you come to the expo, at some point or another, you end up at Fun Spot. So people in the industry know Fun Spot. They've been there for whatever events they may have gone there just to their family came in town, so they wanted to go there, or a vendor's having a reception that's housed there. So one way or another, if you're coming to the expo, you're gonna come. You're gonna find yourself at Fun Spot. All right, Cleet. Well, we got a guest today. It's some people may not be familiar with him by name, but they're definitely aware of his position and the place where he works for. Today, we have with us a guest who is with IAAPA in Orlando, and not is he just with IAAPA, he is the vice president and executive director of IAAPA North America. So, as far as North American properties and attractions in the industry as it pertains to the United States, we're not going to get any higher than this guy. So, welcome to the podcast, Michael Shelton.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing today? Let's have some formalities, of course.
I'll tell you what, it's a great day. It's sunny in Orlando, and like it is most days, and the theme parks are thriving, so we're happy.
I love that. I love that.
That's a troll. Every time someone talks about the weather, they're always talking about how sunny and nice it is. I'm staring at clouds and rain today,
I know it's not
50
it's not
degrees.
fair. I'm so sorry,
Yeah.
But I have to mention it. It's beautiful here.
I'm done talking about the weather as a leadoff until at least July.
I
And
don't
then we'll
think-
complain about
yeah,
how hot
you're
it
a
is.
great point.
Also, Michael, you've been with IAAPA. Yeah, how long have you been there? We'll just buzz through some general things about your background. So, how long have you been with IAAPA?
I'm in my 7th year now, 4th year in this specific role.
Where did you get your start in the theme park entertainment world?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Colorado, which you wouldn't think is a big theme park mecca, but we had one of the first original and now one of the largest water parks in the world in Waterworld, and I kind of cut my teeth there. I was a troubled kid, and my parents at some point when I turned 13 said, "All right, well, you're either going to need to get a job or volunteer somewhere," and they had built this water slide in Denver, and they were hiring, and so they said, "We need you to go find something to do." So that's literally what I did, and the first job I held was called trash boy. It wasn't even trash attendant at the time; it was trash boy. So I think for about $1 an hour, I picked up trash for the summer. And one of my other jobs was they didn't have enough money when they built that first slide to finish the pavement and the pathway to the top of the slide, so it was all dirt. And so I would hold a hose at the top of the ride and hose people's feet off before they got onto the slide. So that was kind of where I got my start in the industry. I don't know if that's where I fell in love with the industry, but that's certainly where I got my start.
Very cool. How do you go from the dry heat of the Colorado summer to whatever that is you have down the summers down in Orlando? Was there a park in between that, or I mean, you didn't go from the trash boy to executive director of North America at IAAPA?
Yeah,
Did you have a lot of stops in between?
Yeah, I had a few, not a lot. Highland Hills Park and Recreation District is a big organization in Colorado, and they own many facilities. We own a large FEC, large ice center complex, the water park. We have senior programs. We have a huge golf course complex. So it was a great company to work for because there were a lot of different things. So I did a lot of different jobs. As a matter of fact, my first full-time job out of college was food and beverage director, and it was probably one of the best jobs I ever could have had, because I think anybody who's worked in food and beverage knows that it's about as difficult as it gets. And I think it's a great way to kind of cut your teeth. So I did that right out of college, and then I ran the FEC at one point. I ran the ice center at one point, and then eventually became the GM of the water park, which was, kind of my dream and my ultimate goal. And eventually I was the managing director of all the facilities at Highland Hills. And then the sunshine came calling. The warm few months in Colorado are great, but Orlando has a lot more of them. And so my wife and I made the family decision to move to Orlando. And it happened to be the exact year IAAPA had moved their headquarters from Virginia to Orlando. So some jobs that opened up. Yeah, and some jobs opened up. So I just kind of took advantage of a great opportunity, and I've never looked back. I really enjoy it here, and of course I love IAAPA.
That's awesome. And honestly, as we go on this, there's any number of rabbit holes we could go down in the industry. Of course, last week was kind of a slow week, but then it made up for lost time in short order. But if we can, before we dive into a lot of that stuff, obviously 5 years ago we were just entering the pandemic, which no one really knew what was going to happen. No one knew how long it was going to last, what things were going to change. We're just going to go back to whatever normal was. But a number of things changed. Guest expectations changed, that how the parks operated changed. So as we talk about, I think that the broader question is, what is the state of the industry? But just give us a quick recap of, from your opinion, how things have changed from expectations from 5 years ago to today, and how's that shaping where we're going?
Yeah, it's a great question. So much has changed, right? I think that the biggest thing parks had to do at that time was, adapt to this distancing and managing of crowds and things like that. And I think one of the things that kind of came out of COVID was some of the technology that was built to address that, and some of the ideas that parks adopted to address kind of all of the issues we were facing in COVID stuck around, right? Mobile ordering, for food and beverage, you see that as still a very big thing in the parks. Crowd capacity limitations for parks. Now you need reservations to go to the park. And I think what the parks found out was, we can manage capacity and give a better experience to the guests. And so I think you saw a lot of that, and I think it still sticks around today. So really, as we went through that time period, it was kind of as difficult as the time it was really a great time to kind of reinvent and rethink how we give our guests a great experience at our parks.
Yeah,
it was a difficult time.
It sure was. Yeah, no, there's a tenet in architecture where it's called universal design, where people discuss, like, when you make something that's accessible for everyone, it ends up being a better product for everyone, even the people who didn't need it to be accessible. And I think that's exactly what we saw during COVID. Was parks wouldn't have gone out of their way to stop what they're doing and say, let's try to reinvent these things with mobile ordering, or especially with reservations. And nonetheless, when it actually did come around, just to help mitigate this crazy disease that we were all fighting, it ended up just being better for everyone anyway. I think that's a really cool, kind of encouraging thing to come out of such a, unremarkable time.
Yeah, unremarkable. That's definitely the word. I almost think too, on the guest side, there was a whole new level of patience that was adopted. We know that during that time period, there were definitely people that were struggling to see things the same way and be on the same page. And I think, it just gave us all a good exercise and lesson in patience. And I think you see that more today than ever.
I know from the vendor side, a lot of things changed, because in a previous iteration of the attractions group, we did interactive technology, which was hitting a fever pitch in conversation and demand as Q1 2020 started, and then of course Earth changed in March, and a number of things changed, and one of those was, well, you're not supposed to touch anything for 2 years. Well, what do you do when your technology is based on interactive technology? You either pivot or you die on the vine, and a number of things just had to change from that. And along with technology changing, guest expectations changed, and I think probably a dovetail into what we're talking about next is some of the venues had to pivot. Some were got stressed financially, and which led to some mergers. Some unfortunately went out of business, didn't survive through it. But also now we're talking about mergers in the industry. One that we knew was coming for a while down the road. One kind of took us by surprise. But Michael, I'd like to catch your opinion as we're talking about mergers and where the industry is at today. The Six Flags Cedar Fair merger is about a year post finalizing. What are your thoughts on how that's going and where that is pointing the industry from here?
Yeah, I think it's going well. I'm always a big fan when a bigger parks are able to combine resources to be more efficient, but also to give a better experience to guests and attendees. And this merger, I don't think it was like two parks in the same city 3 blocks away were now the same company. Most of these parks are scattered throughout the U.S., and I think there's a lot of learnings that can be gained between both Cedar and Six, for example, whether it's safety related or operational or guest experience or queuing of people and efficient ways to move people. I think there was nothing but good upside to gain from this type of merger. I think all of the big players in our industry are always very sharing of information. So even the smaller guys, the smaller parks that we have, are able to really gain from any of these types of mergers. I think they go and they learn from them, and they're able to execute some of the same safety and operational measures that the big parks are able to do. So I think in general, there's more to be seen, right? I want to see some originality. I want to see some innovation. I want to see them do something different and not just make every park look the same. So I think as long as they do those types of things, I think they'll be very successful.
So I can say from the perspective of, I used to work at Kings Island, and we used IROC, the
Right.
safety organization. They are kind of a third party thing that looks at your ride operators and makes sure they're up to the correct standard. And like Fun Spot has used IROC for a number of years, and all of the Cedar Fair chain did. But now, just like you're saying, the Six Flags is going to adopt that for the whole company wide going into this next year, which I think anything safety related, it's always good to have some level of uniformity, just to say, this is our policy, this is what it is, it's going to be regular. But also, on the flip side, from my perspective, it does seem like Cedar Fair and Six Flags were probably each other's biggest competitors. Of course, there's bigger chains with the Disney destinations is going to get more visitors than either of those chains do, um, and there's smaller chains. There's Hershend, which is not as small as it used to be, but there are definitely these smaller chains or independent parks. But chain wide, it seems like those are the biggest competitors. Do you think there's anything lost by them having let's say not to fight with each other anymore?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, Two things. You hit the nail on the head. I think the most important thing is the kind of efficiencies we've gained in the way of safety and consistency, and that's so important. It's so paramount in our industry, and it's what IAAPA stands for more than anything. But to your point, we've seen it before. I think there's risk in adopting the same IP at every single park, for example. Or, hey, we found this coaster. It's great. It's super successful. Let's put it in these 4 other parks as well, because there's efficiencies and cost efficiencies to be gained when you do that kind of thing. So hopefully they'll stay original in the design, maybe the ride path of an attraction, or just the IP, or whatever it is. I think it'll be super important to maintain the character of each of those parks individually.
The new Six Flags has three basic IPs that they operate, correct? The superheroes, Looney Tunes, and Peanuts.
Yeah.
So, and it has there, and that may not be something that we definitely not commenting, or Cleet and I, from any knowledge or experience on that. But it'd be interesting to see, will they keep all three? Will this Legacy Cedar Fair parks adopt Looney Tunes, or will the Six Flag parks adopt Peanuts, or will they do something completely different, or none of it? Is that something that I don't even know when those contracts come up, but is that something that they would ever come to a representative at IAAPA to get any kind of a sense of which direction? I know there's research out there they can get up on member sites within the IAAPA website, but is that anything that ever comes to conversations uh, at the advocacy level?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that that specifically does. These companies are very smart and they do their own research, and I think they're really good about that. But we want to be kind of that conduit between our members and the parks because that is important. Our members are our guests at these parks. Our members represent the entire industry, and they're going to speak loudest. And what's nice is IAPA provides that, whether it's any of our connections events, any of the summits, any of the stuff that we do, it gives an opportunity for parks, the bigger parks like Six Flags and Cedar, to talk to other guests and members and also visit other locations to see what they're doing so they can maintain kind of that authenticity and fresh perspective. So from that standpoint, we're involved, but like on a decision making level, not at all.
David, I'm a little hurt actually that you said I wouldn't have any firsthand experience with knowing about these intellectual properties. The thing you're forgetting is that Snoopy is my best friend.
Oh, well,
Snoopy, he
see,
told me. He told me
he told.
that, yeah, I mean, I was talking to him just last night, and he said every single ride in the new Six Flags chain, the new combined one, is getting rethemed to him. All of them. So
Now,
we'll see how that goes.
now, honestly, if the IPs and the parks have told me anything, is that Snoopy only laughs. So I don't know if you're in on these conversations, but I've only heard the Beagle laugh.
That's
But
true.
I wouldn't mind seeing the Looney Tunes come over. Looney Tunes is kind of a little more in the past and in a different generation. But I have a little bit of a sarcastic sense of humor, and right up there with the Daffy Duck and the Foghorn Leghorn, Bugs Bunny. I would immerse myself in the kids area at Kings Island if they were to adopt the Looney Tunes. But I don't think it's going to go in that direction.
So, Michael, do you think there's anything lost in terms of or gained from the perspective of the vendors, people selling, things to parks? Let's say you are an IROC, or you are a company who does wayfinding in parks, or you are, you do software development for parks. Do you think that this merger helps them because now they have an opportunity to, put on a bigger uniform package, or do you think it like lessens the number of demanders, so to speak? What if you're the perspective? If you're a vendor, how do you feel?
Well, the spirit of great competition, right? I think that there's no doubt the people that already have their foot in the door have the advantage, and I think they need to capitalize on that. And they can't just sit on their heels. They're going to have to keep developing the products they have in these parks to really make them these products talk to each other, park to park, and whatnot. But I also think it's a chance for the ones that aren't currently in those parks to really think twice about how they're developing their products and what they need to be doing to be relevant and to get their foot in the door. And there's a lot of great products out there. It's difficult. I've been in that position before where you're trying to decide what ticketing system or what turnstile to use at your park, and that technology is changing so much that even our vendors are going to have to be on their toes, with
Mhm.
facial recognition and so many of the new things that are coming out to really just always be on the cutting edge so that you're there when that opportunity knocks.
Speaking of facial recognition, have you been to the Universal as they've tested the? It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, when I first went, it seemed it was a little slower, but they figured it out. And the last couple of times I've been, it's been very seamless and really slick because I had to leave the park a couple of times. And when you come back up, you don't need a ticket or anything. It just sees you and says, come on in. And I think that'll be really nice when they get Epic going and all those portals. So great.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm working oftentimes at the front gate at Magic Kingdom, and we have our
The
we,
biometrics.
we do our biometrics there, and
Right.
with the ticket, you tap your ticket on Mickey's head, and then you do your finger for the biometric. And a lot of people after their first visit in, will be like, oh, I just do my finger now. And I have to be like, oh, well, unfortunately, we're not that cool. We're not universal cool where you could just do the biometric the second time.
Well, it's interesting because we ran through this at our park too. We adopted the biometrics, and you get everybody's a little different. Some people didn't want to touch something someone else touched, and some people were like, "Why are you taking my fingerprint?" And that's not exactly what the technology is. But you're going to get some pushback no matter what you do. Even facial recognition, I'm sure there's big concerns with people, with that technology. So I think what's most important for parks is just get the people in as quickly as you can and as efficiently as you can, and make it a great experience for them. And I think the rest takes care of itself. Will you always have some people that struggle with the technology using? Sure, but your goal is to get them in and give them a great experience.
I love it.
So now, as we're talking about the mergers that we were talking about a minute ago with Six Flags and Cedar Fair, that was, I would say, a once in a generational, earth moving merger that comes together. I mean, definitely, you're taking two large park organizations that were competitors with each other, and you merge them together. Now, that happened last year. Fast forward to last week, and we had, they weren't two large organizations like Cedar Fair and Six Flags, but Hershen surprised a lot of people, at least. And I like to think I have my ear to the ground as much as the next person in the industry. But when that news broke last week, normally when those things happen, there's rumors that come out, and there's people foreshadowing it, and sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, or it's just a rumor. But this one, from where I sit, there was no lead up to it. It just, the news broke, and the coming acquisition of Palace Entertainment's properties like Kennywood, Idlewild, and in a number of different, and I think what was the park they had in Iowa?
Adventureland. Yes.
Adventureland is going to be now Hershen properties. So in the last year, you've had two large mergers coming together. One by itself is going to cause ripple effects in the industry. Now you have two of them. Park organizations changing hands. What effect is that going to have on? It just one alone will have a big effect in the industry, but now you have two in the span of a year. How is that going to position things going forward in the industry?
Yeah, it's super interesting. I will tell you, selfishly, from an IAAPA standpoint, we now only get one set of membership dues from the company, so rather than two. So that part doesn't. We don't love that, but we get it. It is what it is. So that's just kind of a side story. As far as this merger, much like the last one, Hershen's an amazing company, and their parks, as you know, are just incredible. Everything they do. So I have no hesitation that they'll be any different, with what they do with these Palace parks. I think that most of these parks that they, acquired have unique character of their own in the parts of the states that they're in. And so I think if anything, it can just give them maybe a little bit of capital infusion they may have needed before that might put them over the top or give them just that one extra reason to visit. So, we're excited, on our end, it's nice. We have our North America Summit is this weekend in Anaheim, and it just so happens Chris Hershend is our keynote speaker. And that was before we knew anything about the merger. So we're hoping he'll speak a little bit more to that and what their plans are. And, our Fun World team is going to cover that. So I think you'll see a great story about it in our next magazine. So, yeah, I'm excited. We've got a lot of great volunteers from all of these organizations that support IAAPA, including Hershen. And, they're great people. And I think great people make great parks, and regardless of who owns them in the end.
And so before we actually hit the record button earlier, you had mentioned that is as big as these two organizations are, and sometimes the news gets leaked out, it even came as somewhat of a surprise to the offices of IAAPA down in Orlando.
Yeah, they're pretty tight-lipped. We hadn't heard much about this really. It just kind of came out, and usually we know a little something, and this one came across pretty quickly, and we knew something was brewing. We just didn't know what. So yeah, it was surprising. Nice surprise.
I think it feels right though, like Lake Compounce or Kennywood being owned by Hershen. That seems like it could have already been true, and I could have just been living in a fever dream this whole time. So yeah, but I do think also speaking of Adventureland, that's the park that jumped to my mind right away with this was like, I think Adventureland is going to benefit from this greatly because that's a park that has kind of almost a resort style feel. You know, they have like a water park, they have their main park, which, you know, feels like Disneyland a little bit. And it has a cool old timey kind of turn of the century feel at the front, but then you have like the medieval part of the park too. And it's a really cool place. But I think it there's like the Hershey Park feel. If you could somehow like add that into Adventureland, that would be like a really amazing experience to do. And not to mention with Adventureland is they've been for the past couple of years having to compete with Lost Island,
Right.
for you know those Midwesterners who are looking for some park time. And I don't know if I'm Lost Island. I might be a little nervous. Maybe I don't know. You know?
Well, you know what I think's funny? We're industry people, so we're in the know on these mergers, and I think that it's exciting, and for those of us who visit a lot of the parks, it's exciting. I think what's key though is I think the vast majority of people who live in those regions don't. The merger means nothing to them. They just want a great park, and
Mhm.
they don't go in there saying, "Well, this looks exactly like the Hershey or Six Flags park I saw in whatever." Most people don't get to do that. They don't get to travel to multiple parks, certainly not in a year, and much less over their lifetime. You know, so I think the importance of just making a park better for the people in that region is the important thing. And I think in general, that's what'll happen. Lake Compounce will be still one of the most amazing parks and maybe even better now. And I think that's all of our hope.
Yeah, I love that, and I think that's so true too. Like, even if you think back to the Six Flags Cedar Fair merger, if every Cedar Fair park, Legacy Cedar Fair park, gets an SNS 40 free spin, I won't be mad. Like, that's fine. Those are
Yeah,
great. You know,
sure.
that's excellent.
I won't have to travel real far to ride it somewhere. I can ride it in my own backyard.
I love that. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah.
So what do you think? Is there still gas left in the tank for more mergers, or are we going to see a lull for a while? No, because
Wow.
honestly, you have other park operators out there, and couple. I think it was maybe not even more than 2 years ago. SeaWorld Parks and Entertainment, before they became United Parks, I believe was looking at Cedar Fair. So I mean, where are the future of mergers going to be happening right now? Do you think, if any?
I don't think it'll ever stop. I think that there'll always be an opportunity to gain efficiencies at the corporate level. And so I think we'll continue to see it. I mean, and it wasn't that long ago, David, that, Cedar was buying Schlitterbahn parks and,
Hmm.
there were other mergers that happened. And so I just think it's going to continue to evolve and money typically dictates that, right? Um, we just hope that us as theme park enthusiasts and lovers of this industry, that we're all the benefactors in the end.
Yeah, and I can say we are a little bit. I just bought my pass for the new Six Flags Cedar Fair mega chain. Wow, that was nice. Not to have to buy two. So
Yeah, very nice.
already benefiting.
I love it. I love it.
Do you think the trend of these mergers, let's say, will stay domestic, or do you think like we could see a Cedar Fair, Six Flags start to expand? We saw Six Flags do it with the Walibi parks many years ago, but even to an extent, Parques Reunidos' decision to sell Palace Entertainment to Hershey kind of leads more towards staying a little more domestic. Do you think that's the trend, or do you think that's just a coincidence in this particular case?
I don't know if it's a trend. I think most of these things are driven by, just different ways of thinking and economic factors and the economy in general, whether it's global or in a particular country. Um, I don't think there's as much kind of patterning behind it as we think there might be. I just think it's just something that comes down to corporate behavior that is, going to really benefit the shareholders or the stakeholders involved.
All right, and just switching gears because we talked about the number of the mergers, and obviously that brings on operational challenges, guest experience challenges, and one of the big topics that's going around the industry, not just the attractions industry now, but every industry really is how is AI changing that? And there's two parts to this question for you, Michael, and one would be how is that changing the operational landscape for parks and how they just do operational things throughout the park with their employees. And part two of the question is, what does that mean for the guest, and how is that improving the guest experience? So there's two parts of that. You can tackle whichever one you want to first.
Yeah, I think AI is seriously evolving and fast, and we're all just trying to keep up. We had some sessions at our expo that covered this. We've got more content coming with a lot of experts in the industry. We're even using some of that ourselves. It's going to be a game changer in both respects, operationally, in designing rides, in everything we do. And there's no way around it. And I think we're all going to be better for it. Are there some scary things about it? Yeah, there's some hesitation for sure out there for a lot of people for a lot of good reasons, but I don't think that we're going to be able to stop it. And so we need to embrace it and harness it and make sure we're using it in the best way we can to make our parks better. But I think, you know, just an app experience alone and the data that can be gathered and the learnings that can be gathered from people who visit your park and what their habits are and what they enjoy doing at your park and how they're engaging on social media about your park, I think is going to be a great way to really understand what your guests want and tailor make the experience for them so that they feel special and personally engaged in everything they're doing. So I think that's the biggest thing you're going to see. I think you're going to see different AI platforms leapfrogging each other as we go along as far as who's stronger and who's doing better. But in general, you can tell it's learning, and it's learning at a fast pace. And I really think that our guests will be better for it, certainly in the long run.
Now, as it goes to the marketing side of it, my genesis of me being involved in the industry goes back, I don't know, 15 years maybe. Whereas I work for a data analytics company, and I'm kind of drawn to the data and make database decisions. You do this because that's what the numbers say. And some of the things that we were doing, we did loyalty programs with one of the park chains. I won't get into who it was, but when the reports came back that this member, this season pass holder, or the apps weren't big yet at that time, they were doing this. This is why you want to make this decision, because the guests tell it to. However, what we found at that time, and maybe AI is something that can help parks make actionable intelligence out of this, but a lot of parks, the data that we were gathering just from someone scanning a card, not an app or a phone at that time, but a card from a person who likes data analytics, would be a game changer. But we found that a lot of the marketing departments at that time had no idea what to do with the level of data that we could generate. And I can only assume that with AI, it's going to be more like a fire hose of information of things that are coming in. But do you see AI being able to turn that data into actionable, executable plans? Or is it going to be another one of those things that is just going to be a backflow of data coming in, and the marketing department still need to catch up with how to run this through operations?
Yeah, I'll speak to it, but I answer it like I know, and I don't. But I will tell you, you hit the nail on the head. I think that the way that AI is evolving, I have no doubt that it will be able to do that. I think back when dynamic pricing first came about, and how helpful that was for parks, and the way that you could really adapt your seasonal schedule to your financial benefit, and quite honestly to the guests' benefit, so they can pick and choose busier or slower days to go on, and things like that. I think you'll see the same thing with AI, and they'll be able to pull so much more information together so much quicker that you'll be able to get this data in real time and make better decisions. And I think it's going to be overwhelming. It'll be a lot to process, but I think it's coming. We need to get ready for it, but I also think it can be something we can use to all of our advantage for sure.
And obviously, like when we're thinking about this right now, we're talking about it a lot from the perspective of the people who are behind the scenes working at the parks, the corporate part of the parks. And I think there's, maybe this is just me being a dreamer here, but I think you could do some pretty cool things as far as just attraction development and integration with AI. How cool would it be if you walked into, the seas with Nemo, and you can kind of do the talking back and forth with Crush right now, but you can just have a conversation with any of these characters, and that's being fueled by a well-developed character based by the creators of these characters. Give them the rights. We don't want to change anything, but have an AI character to take that guest interaction to the next level. I think that could be pretty interesting, pretty cool. But that could be something that's way further down the line.
No, I think you're already seeing it. I think that, even the data they're gathering on your app as it exists helps customize your experience when you come into a park. You walk in the front gates and it says, hey, the line at Ratatouille is short. You want to head over there because it knows you've been there many times, and I think you're going to see more and more of that. And I do think customization of people's experiences is crucial. I think these, like anything corporate driven, even in a big park with 50,000 guests, it's nice to have personal a personal experience laid out for you, and bring you into that experience and what you enjoy and what you relate to, because we're all so different in what we want to experiences in the park. My I have a developmentally disabled daughter, and the technology and AI that they've done so far has been a game changer for even her experience in these parks. So I think you'll see it on so many levels. And to your point, when designing the rides, and you're going to see it at every single level: data gathering, throughput, um, experiential, treatment at the park, designing of rides, safety. I think it's all going to be there, all of it. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Now, if you were to spitball number, with all the data that parks have at their fingertips with the AI now, but also with app, and some that have wayfinders that can track things, all the data that comes in that they have access to, if you were to spitball number percentage wise, how much of that data do you think that the parks use?
Um, how much they use to
For actionable intelligence, because it's a fire hose of information, and I'm sure that there's a lot of data that they think they could use, but they just don't know what to do with it because there's so much, more
yeah,
than any other time.
I think of marketing, especially when you say that, because there's so much data out there, and you have to decide how do you use that data, and who do you target and why, and all the information's there and everything, and what is the most effective way to do it. I think that's the biggest challenge. So I don't know, percentage wise, that's a good question. Since I'm not in the parks, these days, I'd have to get a poll from some members, but I probably could do that and find out. But I would imagine it's higher than you think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did a project back in 2017. I don't remember, that date may be off, but it was with a wayfinding project, which at that time it was groundbreaking technology. People could interact with the screen, touch whatever, and the unit would record what they did, what the guests were looking for. But also, as we went through, there are different technologies came along the way that would also, it could track not people but IPs from this wayfinder to this wayfinder to this, and track traffic patterns throughout the day. And if the app pushed out a notification, you could see if this show is happening over in this section of the park, or some other special thing happening over here. You could watch the heat map of people and IPs, or whatever you want to call it, migrate to different sections. And one of the things that we were really using, and we tried to do early on, was called a smart park idea, which, up until the pandemic was a growing trend, but now as the technology changed and the different trends for it have, but it was something that we would use as a predictive piece for parks to tell, okay, you've got this dead space over here, could be something you could put an attraction over here, or you want to build that new attraction here, you've already got a lot of traffic here, you might want to do another piece to section off the crowds. But it is just a whole data piece that, the level that AI is bringing into the game right now is just immeasurable. It'd be one of those where back in the day, you used to have to hire a marketing agency to have someone prop up and observe things, or you watch it by camera. Then you could do it by people's phones, could track through the park. Now AI brings a whole new level. It's, if you're in marketing, what a golden age to be in marketing right now, because you have more data at your fingertips to make yourself look like a genius than any time in the attraction's history.
You know what I want to see AI solve, and it will. I'm certain of it. And maybe it's through what we were talking about. Just kind of making the experience unique to you. Is I think the biggest problem in the parks now that we've embraced these mobile devices and technology is getting people to enjoy each other in the parks. I still go to the queue lines and they have their phone in their hand. Um,
Hmm.
Everywhere they go, they're still. I see the kids in the strollers, and all they're doing is playing games on their phone. And are they really experiencing the park and time together with family? So I want to see someone or AI solve that, and maybe it's tracking everything you're doing on the phone and making that experience for you, and you just don't need to look at your phone because everything's taken care of. But I would like to see that. That's probably the last piece that we really need, is to get people back together in the parks instead of so separate. I was sit down at dinner at Magic Kingdom the other night, as a matter of fact, Cletus, and everybody in that restaurant was on their phone, not even talking to each other. And
Hmm.
so it'd be interesting to see how we can get that resolved.
Yeah. Another big thing to me, that seems just insanely relevant right now. I'm actually looking at a couple of truffula trees on my nightstands, and it makes me think about, how green can we get with our parks? Where can we make efforts to be more sustainable? And I know IAAPA's been a huge player in that, with helping move the push towards sustainability in the entertainment, the attractions world. Is there anything you can speak to about how parks can be more sustainable, and what the sort of the vibe is in the industry on going green?
Sure, yeah. We've embraced sustainability like no other organization. We've made the commitment this last year. We hired our first global sustainability director, and she's going to lead our efforts when it comes to content and creating resources for our members to really give them. I think most people want to be sustainable. They just don't know exactly what that means, and that's where IAPA comes in. We're gonna show them that path. We're gonna help them understand what it means to be sustainable, because I think most people, you know, the future is to grasp sustainability by all, not just by a few key individuals. And the sooner that everybody understands that, reducing waste, improving efficiencies, responsibly sourcing products, it's not just a good press or a good idea. It'll reduce your costs. And I think that particularly in North America, because that's the region I serve, we're a little slower to develop it because we're so used to our modern conveniences. Uh, and so what we need to do, to be sustainable, is discover how we can offer that same level of comfort and convenience, and still be sustainable and still meet those goals of sustainability. And I can tell you that the answers are out there. We just need to embrace it, and we're going to help our members understand what that is.
So what kind of sustainability is a pretty broad tent. It's a wide umbrella. What are some of the efforts that IAPA is bringing on, or that you've heard come on? There can be sustainability through energy efficiency or through recyclables, or I think probably one of the things that the parks do a lot of is throwing the black trash bags, leftover food that people don't they order. I go to Kings Island. I see something that I'm pretty sure the family probably spent $15 on this entree or whatever, and they're throwing half of it away. And so, is that part of sustainability, or what are some of the efforts that is coming from my IAAPA right now?
Yeah, sure. I can share some with you, and I can share some of the challenges too. For those of you who've been to our show for many, many years, we used to have the big plastic badge holder, and the unique thing was we switched to just a recyclable piece of paper that had kind of a coating on it, and we really reduced our footprint on what we were using there. But of course, that came to some people as an inconvenience because they used to store business cards in there and
Hmm.
tickets to events and everything. But we went digitally to all of our ticketed events. Everything we did, we really reduced our footprint. And so for all of the events that we do, and operations, we're trying to do it with as little products and paper as we possibly can. But we've really expanded our sustainability content at Expo in our education block. I think that's a great way to, we have this global audience of members, and we've been able to develop a way to bring them all together to discuss what everybody's doing in their parks, so that everybody can kind of adopt the same mentality. And again, just needing to know where to start. And this is a great place to learn about that. We feel like, every action counts. So we have a sustainability pledge that our manufacturers and suppliers make when they come to our show floor. And we have a list of 40 or so items that they need to pledge that they're going to adhere to. And then we give them a sustainability designation on the show floor that they can brag about to their members. So, we're doing so many things to really kind of set the standard, but show that we're part of it. And then now with our commitment to our global sustainability director, she's going to start putting out resources that our members can kind of embrace and learn from. One of the first things we did was we hired a consulting group, which many people do, to help us identify what are the smartest things we can do. And they came back with a very long report of so many things that we can do. And, under that sustainability umbrella is, accessibility and inclusivity of members, because you think of all the people that visit our parks. We want to make sure we're a park for everyone, all shapes, sizes, and types of people. And that is a big challenge for our industry because everyone is so different, including my daughter. And it's great to see all of these efforts move forward so that we can provide that experience to our guests. And I think you're just going to see it get stronger and stronger. And IAAPA's, we have strategic priorities set forth by our board, and that's our number 2 strategic priority, right behind safety. So I think you'll see more and more from IAAPA coming.
Are a lot of the members beginning to adopt that? Because even 5 years ago, before the pandemic, sustainability was kind of a term that was started gaining steam, but was really picked up traction in the last couple of years. Is this I guess I'm trying to figure, my question is that our park operators, I think a vendor would be easier to pick up and do this. When you're a park operator and you have thousands of employees, some are seasonal and they change all the time, that sustainability requires a lot of training. Is this something that that park operators are adopting quickly, or is it more of a slow burn?
Yeah, I think speaking globally, I think North America is behind the curve a little bit, and it's kind of what I mentioned before. I think that we're so used to our modern conveniences, that getting used to either operating with less or doing less is a challenge. These people come to our parks and they pay a lot of money, and I think they don't want a reduced experience. But that doesn't mean our parks aren't doing it. I think that they're all just trying to find that right balance, and we're here to help them do that. And I think there is a balance there, and you start with the big stuff, and you make your mark there. We had a big recycling program at the water park I was at, and what we learned over time was, and I think we all can agree on this, at least in North America, is what does each one of those bins really mean? And I don't think we ever did a good job of really defining what a recyclable is per bin or whatever. And so I've seen a lot of parks adopt a very simple program, which I thought was great. They started with the simplest: cardboard, trash, or cardboard bottles, trash. And I think that's the best thing you can do, is just start somewhere. And then I think that slowly migrates into more and more and more.
I think each park operator is probably going to have to figure out where the pain point is, and where they figure the expense of doing the sustainability outweighs the benefit of doing that outweighs the expense otherwise. One of the companies I work with in my spare time is they do energy efficiency. Now, a number of years ago, if you're looking up energy efficiency in the United States on Google, you might find an essay someone wrote in college or a government study, but nothing, and maybe something overseas, not a whole lot here, but really a push for energy sustainability and being more efficient didn't become a conversation, at least from the Google search perspective, until I think it was fall of 22, which, and I don't know how the energy auctions go and how they price all that out, but energy rates spiked 30% in one quarter. Well, now all of a sudden, if you go in Google search and you search these things, there's pages and pages and pages of responses of these, all stateside. Whereas previous to 2022, there really wasn't a whole lot. So it definitely comes to where the price benefit is, to where parks are willing to do something if it helps the bottom line. Will they spend on something that doesn't give them a return? Probably not. But is that are a
I
lot
think
of
it's
the
three things.
efforts
Yeah.
are a lot of the efforts awaiting a benefit for it?
Yeah, I think there's three things. You're probably right. I think the first step for most parks is, geez, I don't have the budget to take a hit here, so I'm going to do only something that is will financially benefit us. I think the second step is just understanding the simple things that you can do, and guests will pressure you to do that. And I think that'll be the second piece. Will be you'll start hearing from your guests that you're not answering that call, and I think that pressure helps determine kind of what you're doing. And then I think the final thing is I think companies just need to be taking the lead. They need to understand that
Mm-hmm.
this is it's where we should be going, and yeah, just find the best way you can do it, but have a plan. And some companies, like Disney, might have a much bigger budget and a much bigger plan, and that's fine. So go learn from them, and then come up with your own. And I think we'll see it change. It won't just be about the money eventually.
Yeah, I know. Now, speaking of Disney specifically, now, and I know this is a better way to do it. It's better for the environment. I get that, but I hate their paper straws.
I don't think
Our family, when we go to Disney, we pack the plastic straws to take with us in our suitcases, so that when
yeah.
we go to somewhere Disney Springs, or probably not so much in the parks, but go to Disney Springs, we don't have the straws that fall apart on us.
Yeah,
But that's
I think I don't think you're alone there. I think most people feel that way. My favorite is every time I've gotten a paper straw at a McDonald's or a Starbucks, whatever, and it's in this giant plastic cup. So I feel like it's kind of doesn't make sense. So I don't know. I've seen some alternative straws, these agave straws or whatever they are, and they're
Mhm.
better for sure. But yeah, that sure is a nuisance. I'm not gonna lie.
I will say there's a location at Disney Springs that they have not the plastic straws. I don't know if it's the agave straws that you're talking about, but it's a little more longer lasting. And I won't say which place it is because they used to have them out front, and now they kind of have them behind where you have to ask for them because I think people go and grab handfuls of them, and go somewhere else and use them. But
Yeah.
it's some places still have that. We'll call it a decent straw.
SeaWorld has the edible ones. They're flavored, and I've done them at their food festival, and they're very good, and they're actually good straws. So like you can actually drink out of those real good. So they're out there.
There's another great option that I've heard about recently. It's just you know, just drink out of the cup. Because I think, like, have you seen the new Starbucks lids? They have just like the
Yes.
little
Yeah.
opening. You don't
Yep.
need a straw. I think let's just do that. Those are great.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll always have the kids that need a straw, but I think in general, I think we can all find a
Yeah.
different solution for sure. Dang straw. Dang it.
Yeah, who thought we would park over that for a couple minutes? So, Michael, we've gone for a while, and in each of these conversations that we've had, from the mergers to AI to sustainability, we could literally go into an hour-long show, for maybe even a series on each of them. But in essence of not going longer than we really should for people to listen, I do want to hit on one final thing, because the IAAPA Expo that takes place in November in Orlando, if you've never been, I remember going down the first year as a vendor, and the moment my business partner and I hit the trade show floor, we didn't even know where to start. We had ideas what we wanted to do when we got there, but of course it was just 3 days. It's overwhelming. And touch a little bit on what the experience is of the IAP Expo. And I'd love to get into what it takes to put that together, but we unfortunately don't have time for that, at least on this episode. But what are some things that you want the vendors and the park operators to experience once they get there? What is the main takeaway from the expo, and what does that mean for the industry overall?
It's our own. It's a theme park of its own, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's only once a year, but we want to make sure that there's something for everyone in our industry, whether you're a first year salaried employee that works in ticketing. We want you to go because we have over 1,100 exhibitors there. We have over 140 educational opportunities. We have networking sessions, everything. There truly is something for everyone. I've been coming to the show for 35 years, and every year I've been able to come to the show. I tell this to my team all the time is I would come to the show and I would go to some educational sessions with the trade show floor, and I'd come up with this new idea. And then I would take it back to my team at home. And then it was, hey, Michael came up with a great new idea, when it really wasn't my idea at all. It came from Expo. And so many of the great revenue generating ideas that we had came from Expo. The products that we put in our park, every single product we bought originated from the show floor. Every education session I went to taught me something about food costs, about dynamic pricing, about sustainability, so many things. And this show is kind of the place to be for our industry globally. Mm-hmm. It's a place you're going to connect with more people than you would ever have an opportunity to connect with otherwise. Where could you go where you could connect with 50 different theme parks around the world without traveling anywhere but to Orlando? So I think that's the magic of IAAPA Expo. I think that it's the one-stop shop. You can do everything. And by the way, we're also in Orlando, which is the theme park capital of the world. So you can extend your vacation mm-hmm. like I did many times and go see some of these parks firsthand, some of these leaders in the industry. And I think that's really what's made us unique.
It's amazing, just an experience, and not just for the vendors. There for a while, or actually even up to this year, we started taking our family. I'd bring my daughters down. The first couple of years I went by myself, and then thought my kids would get a kick out of this. So would bring my daughters down, and while my wife was working, she couldn't come down. So who do I bring? I bring my mother down, who she hasn't rode anything in decades. And the take home for me was to see her with the VR glasses on, sitting with the girls, taking these experiences. But it really is an experience all its own. And fortunately as a vendor, the pandemic brought an opportunity for smaller companies like mine, whereas 2021, we were all ready to go in 2020, and then I think it was Labor Day weekend or whatever, the IAAPA decided that the expo wasn't going to happen that year. So fast forward to 2021, which was a smaller trade show floor, but gone was the 120 vendor waiting list that we were on the year before. So we were able to get on right in a great place, because I forget what the name of the company, but they had the roller coaster set up right across from us. So people that were coming to watch that would come to our booth. And then 2022 we exhibited again, and those are just the goofy years where people come with their booth, but their exhibit was stuck in shipping somewhere because the supply chain wasn't quite getting everybody to where they needed to be, and piecing things together. And so then we had 2 years of tenure, which we weren't ready to do something in 23, and so we had a break, and now we're back in that great waiting list of things to be back on. But it's, no matter what, it's just a great experience if you're a vendor, if you're an operator, or you're just a guest that comes in to experience it all. Has the expo itself, has it recovered to pre-pandemic levels?
Yeah, it definitely has. We're back to a fairly long waiting list. We had record attendance this past year at the show. Our last 2 years have been records for us. So we're very proud of the product that we're putting out for everyone. And I think it shows that the industry is growing, and that they're craving new ideas, and connecting with other people is still super important. And that's what we do best. We're looking to expand the show in the next few years, so watch for more information on that. But everything at the moment is looking really good.
Because there is really no place to expand where it's at. I mean, it's maxed out for the most part.
In the halls that it's in, but there's still
right in the north and south hall. Right,
yeah,
there's across
the west
street
side. There's still room to grow, and we're exploring that now.
I love that.
Yeah, and I knew when we were there in 21 and 22, we were helped by the fact that the companies from most of the vendors from Asia hadn't returned yet, and then 23, and definitely this past year, everyone's back.
Yep. Yeah, no, it definitely back, and better than ever. And we've done our surveys at the end of the show, and we have some of the highest ratings of our shows that we've ever had. So we're hitting on all marks right now, but we want to keep, just like the parks, we're always innovating too. We want to make sure we always the freshest speakers and content and the best exhibitors, and the overall show experience is great for everyone. People invest a lot to come down here for 1 week, whether you're a vendor putting a booth on, you've got to pay all the travel and hotel costs for your teams and to feed them, as well as the booth costs. And our attendees are no different. And so we want to make sure, just like the parks are doing, that we just put on a great show and we give everybody exactly their money's worth and what they were looking for in the experience. And so far we've been doing that. So we literally, the day that that show ends, we start planning for the next year, and we're knee deep in it right now. So I hope we'll hit again this year.
All right. Well, like I said before, any number of the topics we brought up, we probably could have had a series of podcasts on each topic, but unfortunately, there's going to come a point where people stop listening to it. So we've hit on a lot of topics. It's been a great conversation from where I sit, and I hope this definitely isn't a one-off for you. I hope we can have you back at some point.
Well, I appreciate talking to you guys, and to any of our members out there, reach out if you need anything at all. We're here for you, and thank you, but gentlemen, both. Thank you very much.
If someone wants to reach you or the IAAPA offices for any kind of need that they would have operationally, or even non-members seeking to be a member, what's the best way to reach you?
We're all listed on the website, but IAAPA at NorthAmerica.org is. North America at IAAPA.org is the best way to reach us on the North America team, and we'll respond right away. So,
all right. Well, Michael, it was a great conversation. Really appreciate having you on, and good luck putting things together for November. It sounds kind of odd, but that's 7 months out. Not a lot of time, is it?
Comes fast.
It does. Well, loved having you on. Thanks a lot.
All right. Take care, gentlemen. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. How about that? Wow. It seems like every time we get done with one of these interviews, I'm just so excited. And I'm like, we're not going to beat that one.
It is going to be tough. We've set the bar high on this one. It's going to be tough to top this one. And honestly, I might have said this a number of times, and I'll beat the horse until it's real dead. But any number of those topics that we talked about, and Michael is definitely has insight on just about everything on that. It could have taken on a life of its own and been its own episode, or maybe even a series of episodes.
I just wanted to ask him, he was a theme park fan from Colorado. He must have gone to a Litch Gardens a bunch. How does he maintain all that information in his mind, having his mind erased so often? Mind eraser at a Litch Gardens? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's taken back from Six Flags days, because that was the mind eraser at Six Flags. That was
absolutely. Six Flags America.
One of their names they used. One,
yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in this week. Yep. David, what are we looking forward to next week?
Next week, Clete, I'm excited about this interview. We have a guest coming on. She is from Cody, Wyoming. I've seen pictures from their social media, and just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful landscape. She describes herself as a seasoned life coach. She is a 3-time author and a host of her own podcast called We're Talking Shift. Not the other word. We're Talking Shift. Not the other word, just that one. Her name is Lori Bischoff, and we're looking forward to just interviewing her, talking about how executives, regardless of the industry, but the attractions industry, because that's where we're at, how people can get snowed under what they're doing and get deadlocked into sometimes burnout, sometimes a creative rut, but just ways that she coaches people and executives on how to get past those and move on to the next thing. And so we're looking forward to that. And we hope that everybody can tune in next week.
That's right. Hit the like, hit the comment, hit the subscribe, hit the share. This is YouTube, for goodness sake. And, I think each of you're all thinking about right now, you're thinking about somebody who you think would love the Attractions Group podcast if they ever saw it. So you might as well hit the copy link and just send them a quick text and just see, let them decide if they like the Attractions Group podcast. Maybe they will.
Awesome.
All right, guys. We'll see you in the parks. I hope so. And David, see you right back here next week.
All right.